now. I didn't bet the AD prop yet, but I'm going to get in on this. I think AD will go off tonight, but the Bucks will win this game. So let's play Anthony Davis to the AD to the over. All right, we got I got the Rockets and the Blazers too, but I can't really pretend to care too much about that. All right, give me where's Anthony Davis? Here we go. Anthony Davis over 26.5 points. Feels like a Dame Lillard night tonight as well. I'm going to go with Dame Lillard over 24.5. Listen, we know Giannis is a freak and he's a monster and all that, but it's 31.5 points. I can live with Lillard at 24.5. I could see Lillard, back on the West Coast. Good memories playing at the Crypt. So give me the Milwaukee Bucks to win a basketball game. AD over 26.5 points and Damian Lillard over 24.5 points. College basketball, I'm looking to close out a moneyline parlay right now. I've got Bradley. I need Bradley to beat Illinois, Chicago. Remember yesterday, Pepperdine absolutely smoked Pacific. It was 37-2 at one point, 56-9 at the half. Life's not so easy tonight against San Diego. San Diego's beating them 34-26 right now. Early in the second half, we've got more West Coast Conference action coming up a little bit later on with Portland and Loyola Marymount. And I actually got a play for everybody on this game that I will be betting. Let's do this thing. This is Sports Rage. Bring it.
Laying points on the road in college basketball is an absolute landmine. I would not do it. I won't do it the rest of the year. I'm done doing that because it just consistently loses.
3 possessions in a 9-point game in which the opposition now is the clock, not the actual team you're facing, right?
Right.
And these guys are taking up shots. It's just like, that's why it's the NBA.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid.
Athletes in Canada, Wayne Gretzky, Connor McDavid, no longer can be part of these sports betting ads.
Now, what's interesting is there is technically a carve-out that will still let these athletes and celebrities appear in sportsbook ads, but it's only if those ads are slanted toward responsible gaming. So you could still have a Connor McDavid saying, hey, bet responsibly on TV in Ontario.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
4.22, the fastest man alive.
The guy just made himself a whole lot of money, did he not? By now holding the record for the fastest 40-yard dash. But if it's one thing we know is that doesn't translate into quality football players in the NFL. So somebody will bite and overdraft him because he simply ran faster than everyone else. It's just rinse and repeat.
The early line, only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Thank you. I appreciate this. You want you one of these?
I'm good, KG.
You want you a ginger shot?
I'm good, man. I'm good.
I need some positivity today. I'm trying to cover this spread, and your vibe is off, G.
What's wrong with my vibe?
You got to get you one of these, G. Get to sip some of this positivity in your life, and boom! You see that? Spread's covered. Thank you, Mama. In a minute, G. Ha ha!
This is SportsRage. I am Gabriel Morency. The Friday Night Free Show has begun. We've got 2.2 seconds remaining right now in Seatown with the Minnesota Timberwolves and the Cleveland Cavaliers. And I got to tell you, man, I know that Karl-Anthony Towns is really good, but for the Minnesota Timberwolves are done crowd because Karl-Anthony Towns isn't there, no. This team is good, man. This team is good. We watched them play against the Pacers the other night without Karl-Anthony Towns, and Anthony Edwards just would not be denied. Here they are again on the road, and I'm surprised he just didn't hit the game winner at the buzzer, to be honest. He just missed, so we're going to overtime. 97-97. So you've got a shorthanded team that's been on the road all week. Now, listen, Cleveland are shorthanded as well, but the T-Wolves are the real deal. This is a good basketball team. And you know why they're so good? It's their damn size. Edwards is a badass with his scoring and stuff. He really is amazing. But they're a big team, man. Like Daniels is big. Gobert is big. They've got some like big, tall, big dudes, man, on this team with or without Karl-Anthony Towns. And I like Cat, but Cat's kind of a stat guy anyways. Let's bring in Joe Madden right now and get her thoughts. We've got a couple of minutes here. Joe, good to see you tonight. How you doing on this Friday night?
I'm doing good, Gabe. Good to see you as well. How are your bets hitting tonight?
We're all right. You know what? We still have a lot of action coming up here this evening. So whatever. I lost a fight earlier in the day. I was on the wrong side of the Nagano and Anthony Joshua match. We hit an NCAA hockey game earlier tonight. But the jury's still out. There's still a lot of racetrack left to go. Tonight. There's a lot of games left, especially, in college basketball. We got the West Coast Conference Tournament going on in Las Vegas, but NHL hockey tonight, light night this evening. But let's talk about the Jets and Kraken. It just started here, Joe. Who did you like in this game tonight? The Kraken are home dogs, plus 100 right now. The Jets are minus 130. The total's 5.5. Who'd you take in this game?
I took the Kraken in this one. I know they just beat the Winnipeg Jets in Winnipeg, and that gives me even more reason to like them here at home. I think with Joey Decord in net, this team has every ability to get the win. And that's not saying I don't believe in the Winnipeg Jets, but I look at who Winnipeg has on deck tomorrow. They have your Vancouver Canucks on deck tomorrow. That's a huge look ahead to the number one team in the Pacific. I think they overlook the Kraken slightly in this one, and the Kraken find a way to get the win. I also like the under 5.5, low scoring game here for me, Gabe.
I think it'll be a low scoring game as well. I'm going to play the under 5.5 in this spot. They do play the Vancouver Canucks again tomorrow. At this point, though, every game is big. So I don't buy into the look-ahead stuff. Like whether you're playing Seattle, Vancouver, Las Vegas, does it really matter, right? You need to get the points either way. I should know, too, Winnipeg beat Vancouver a couple of weeks ago on a Saturday night. I was at the game. So they're playing again tomorrow, and you figure it would be a good spot for Vancouver with Winnipeg playing tonight. Plus, Winnipeg have made these moves right now. To me, it always takes a couple of days for people to get adjusted and the new players to get there and everything. But Winnipeg had a good little week here as far as the trade deadline is concerned. All right, the Stars are already up 1-0 on the Ducks here, Joe. Who are you on in this one?
Okay, I'm on the Ducks on the puck line, plus the 1.5. I just felt in this situation they could keep it tight. We know the Dallas Stars, their last two games, the San Jose Sharks push them into OT situations. And any team that's going to OT versus the Sharks, I think has every opportunity of not being able to cover the puck line here versus the Anaheim Ducks at home in this one. They've got a game tomorrow as well, first night of a back-to-back. I think this could be a situation where the Ducks cover. I'm not sure if the Ducks win in this one. I can't put it my money there for them because we know the Dallas Stars are so much stronger. I really like what we've seen out of Hintz and Robinson. I looked at their points to the over as well in this one tonight. Rupe Hintz, his points 2+ was plus 310. I took that instead of the anytime goal because I did expect him to get those points on the board. And Jason Robinson, I did take for the anytime goal at plus 155 game.
Joe Madden kicking it with us. 1-0 for the Avalanche right now over the Minnesota Wild. 11 minutes remaining in the second period of play there. And the Coyotes, surprisingly, are beating the Red Wings right now. 4-0, Joe.
Yeah, complete domination by the Arizona Coyotes. And it's interesting to look at the fact they've won 3 of the last 4 meetings versus the Red Wings. I still expected the Red Wings to be able to score in this one. I know that they still have Dylan Larkin out, and I think that really has added a weakness up the center for the Arizona Coyotes to be able to score tonight. But I do think the Red Wings should be able to get on the board, plus the 3.5 right now live on the puck line at plus 120, I think is a fantastic way to take this game. I don't see them being shut out, and I don't think the Arizona Coyotes continue to dominate into the third period here. So it might take the Red Wings a while to get back in this game, but I think they have every ability to, Gabe.
Yeah, plus 3.5 right now, plus 115 is the number. Tomorrow there's a full slate and some pretty interesting matchups, actually. We talked about the Winnipeg Jets and the Vancouver Canucks. The Canucks are minus 140 home favorites. The total is 6 in that game. And up first, Carolina and New Jersey. So Carolina had a good week. They get Jake Gensel. Everybody wanted to get Gensel. Carolina are the ones that end up getting him. They bring in Kuznetsov as well, which is kind of just a roll of the dice type of acquisition at this point. So I assume Gensel's going to play tomorrow. There's been time for him to get there. But the Devils picked up a couple of goalies. Probably too late, Joe, right? Everybody knew the Devils needed goalies, but it's kind of, I guess better late than never, but it's kind of late to do this now. Yeah, with Jake Allen.
Better late than never? Like, it's better never than never with Jake Allen, in my opinion. I don't have faith in him.
Listen, I've been saying for years, and as far as Montreal is concerned, I knew that Montembeault was like the future. And I knew this a couple of years ago, and I told people that. But the Devils needed an upgrade. So it is for them, but I don't think it matters. No, it's all said and done. So I actually do like Carolina in this game tomorrow.
Yeah,
I think Carolina
like
start to dial it up a notch.
Yeah, they definitely will. Huge team, like huge acquisitions here at the trade deadline. I really like what they were able to do, and I think they're ready to make a run for the cup. So I love what they're doing, especially you look at how strong their defense is. They should be able to lock down the New Jersey Devils. I think the shifting too of the lines without Tyler Toffoli out there is going to be interesting to see what the Devils do. And he was a huge impactful player for them. So I'd go big on the Canes tomorrow. I want to know your thoughts on the Pittsburgh Penguins, Gabe, because this was the first time in forever that they didn't buy at the trade deadline. And I think that core group, Sidney Crosby, is going to be upset going out there. They're facing the Bruins tomorrow. Are we going to see any drive out of the Pittsburgh Penguins after that?
Well, they just lost 6-0. So we kind of know, right? Like we might be a day late, dollar short with that, but no, there's no way you could trust the Penguins. Sidney Crosby's despondent. This is like the low point of his career, even though he's playing well. It's not his fault, but you're right. It's the low point of the career. The Penguins are not like a team that I want to be involved with. Maybe in a week or two, they realize, all right, they can just randomly get hot for a couple of games. But no, I think they're a big fade, actually. Anything else tomorrow you like?
Ooh, the Florida Panthers. I think they come out and dominate over Calgary. I know Calgary got that big win versus the Tampa Bay Lightning. They shouldn't have won that. Tampa needed that win so bad. I know Calgary's us against the world mentality, but this Florida Panthers team is so phenomenally strong. I just can't buy into it. And then we got some ugly games. The Sens versus the Sharks. I want nothing to do with the Sharks. Losing hurdle, I don't know. I think it's going to be bad, but I could see a way the Sens could get the win. Vladimir Tarasenko gone from that lineup too, so it's going to be interesting.
The Canadians always play the least tough when they play in Montreal. I think that the Canadians could be a live dog tomorrow night, even though they're terrible.
Watched the final seconds of Illinois and Penn State, and by Dave's reaction, you think you know what happened there. How about that, Dave? How about that?
We're off the rundown. Sorry. Storm the court. You beat the 12th team in the country. That's fine. Second best in the Big Ten. That's fine. We are Penn State. Look at the crew jumping. This is so much fun.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid.
Maybe not a match that we thought would be the most enticing 6 months ago, but Newcastle, they are kind of on the ropes. They looked awful against Blackburn in the FA Cup.
Lamine Yamal's been the stand-up player, a guy that's 16 years old, a guy that was drafted in from La Masia, from the academy. It says a lot, really. It says a lot about the really poor standard of the rest of the players this season.
Pro League Soccer powered by Marca, only on SportsGrid.
4.22. The fast man alive.
The guy just made himself a whole lot of money, did he not? By now holding the record for the fastest 40-yard dash. But if it's one thing we know is that doesn't translate into quality football players in the NFL. So somebody will bite and overdraft him because he simply ran faster than everyone else. It's just rinse and repeat.
The early line, only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the game starts, so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better
$107-104 for the Cleveland Cavaliers. There's about $1.50 left in overtime. I swear, man, this game all night has been like a one-point game. I swear, it was like, 2019. I check back in. Oh, look, it's 38-38. I check back in like 10 minutes later. I'm coming in and out of the room, out of the studio. I look back up. I'm like, oh, wow, it's 79-79, huh? And then look, they go to overtime. Like all night, this game has been close. This might be Cleveland's largest lead right now. They got a 4-point lead with $1:21 left, 108-104. Cleveland Cavaliers up on the Minnesota Timberwolves right now. No LeBron tonight for the Lakers as they host the Milwaukee Bucks. It's 14-14, midway through the first quarter of play right now. Let's bring in Steve Merrill, talk some college basketball and more. Steve, good to see you tonight. WagerTalk.com. How you doing, Steve?
Yeah, Gabe, I'll jump on your piggyback on your NBA thoughts. I mean, I did the NBA tip-off show earlier. I guest hosted the show today on Friday on Wager Talk TV, and the Lakers, are about a 1-point dog, I think, when we did the show at 4 o'clock Eastern, and LeBron's out now. It's, closes 4.5. We saw Towns out again for Minnesota, second night in a row. They were a dog. Anthony Edwards was questionable earlier this afternoon. So crazy times right now in the NBA as we're in March. A little bit of madness in the NBA as well.
I'm not a fan. This is my least favorite time of the year to bet on, not the conference tournament, Steve, but the regular, like the non-conference tournaments, the end of conference play games, these NBA games. The NHL is a little different because the NHL is kind of insane. These guys just go hard every night, no matter what. So it doesn't really change much, but you know what I mean, Steve? Like, it's the calm before the storm, as you stated. Coaches are starting to think about the playoffs. You've got to worry about the big picture now and not just these games. Plus the players. It's a long season, man. Players are getting worn out, bro.
Yeah, there's no question. I probably am going to have less NBA plays over the next few weeks than I will at any other point, in the last few months or the next few months, because first of all, there's so much value with conference tournament action next week. So many games to choose from. March Madness, the NCAA tournament, it's obviously a very popular time, but it's also a very profitable time. I always do quite well with it. So, yeah, I probably will be treading a little lightly in the NBA, and that goes back to kind of what we're talking about. I mean, some craziness. What about the Magic? The best point spread team in the NBA over the past year, and they closed as like a 3-point dog. They were like a 1.5-point favorite all day, and they get blown out by 24 by the hapless Knicks. Obviously, Brunson had been questionable all day, but really kind of a crazy night so far in the NBA. Wizards won, by the way. How about that, Gabe?
Wizards, 16 in a row. Huh? They snapped their 16. That's what I'm saying.
They won by 12.
It's an look at the Sacramento Kings. Same thing. They go to LA, they beat the Lakers, they go back home, they lose to the Bulls.
Yeah,
like it's just sort of where it's a wild league. It's a tough league to bet on, the NBA. Let's just call it out for what it is. It's a tough league to bet on. I almost look at it. I guess Gabe? The best. I want to say, Steve, when I said I don't like this time of the year, to me, we're not quite there yet, but it's almost like betting the last week of the NFL regular season. You know what I'm saying?
Oh,
you know, when you get to that, it's like, oh, man, I don't know, dude. You got this backup and that, man. It's like, it's tricky. It's not, and sometimes you have like 2 weeks of that. At the end, it's sort of like, let's get to the playoffs, man. Let's just get to the playoffs. I'm starting to feel that way right now about the NBA. I'm like, I don't know, dude. These games, who knows? They might cover, they might not. Who knows?
Well, it's funny you say that, though, because I've always said the number one key to handicapping the NBA all year long, regular season, is motivation, right? You got to know which teams are focused. You mentioned like the Kings, the Lakers, all those spots. And isn't it funny? Because that's how you handicap the NFL preseason, right? It's all about motivation back in August. And week 17, week 18 of the NFL is a little bit like that, too. Who's resting starters, load management. We see that in the NBA as well. What I was going to say earlier, though, how about the Atlanta Hawks? Here come the Atlanta Hawks. The worst point spread record in the history of the NBA for the first half of the season. I think they started like 11-35 ATS, and they've now gone 11-6 ATS their last 17 since. They beat the hapless Grizzlies. I get that. Exactly right, and that's the point. You always look for a catalyst. We talk about not trying to catch that falling knife, whether it's the stock market or the betting markets. You have to see a catalyst for a team to bottom and turn things around, and isn't it ironic that they've turned things around the last 7 games now? I think they're 5-2 straight up without Trae Young. It's like they have, and the Memphis Grizzlies, haven't had Morant. They don't have anybody.
But suddenly you get more points. So there's value almost. He's getting more points now with him, too, because Trae Young isn't there. But, another thing is, Steve,
against the spread. Yeah.
Exactly. So another one, though, is like it's sort of like college basketball. There's always going to be a team that's not that good that just plays well in the conference tournament. And, wow, hey, look, are they going to run in the NCAA tournament? I'll never forget. I remember it was a couple of years ago. Maybe 2-3 years, about 3 years ago, I think. It was the first 4 play-in in Dayton, Steve. And it was one of those teams that made it. They were like 13-18 on the season type of deal. I don't know, Texas Prairie View A&M, whatever the hell it was. You know what I mean? It was one of these teams, and they were bad, bro. And I was studying them for the tournament. I remember talking about it a lot. I said, this team is the worst three-point shooting team in the history of the NCAA tournament. Like, they shot like 22% or something on the season.
Right.
Like, they were terrible. Bro, they got to Dayton. They literally hit like 9 3-point shots in the first half.
Yep.
You know what I mean? It was like they had the game of their life then. It was like, wow, everything's falling. Everything's falling for us.
Right.
But the Bulls are like that. People have sort of given up on the Bulls, the Chicago Bulls. And it's like, hey, the Bulls they're winning. They've won 4 straight games outright. And how about this dichotomy, Steve? How about Pepperdine yesterday? They're up 37-2 on Pacific. They're up 56-9 at the half. and now they're down to San Diego tonight.
Good. I use San Diego as my free play of the night at wagertalk.com. That was on my page free for everyone today, so I'll take it.
Pepperdine's coming back, though. They're coming back. San Diego were murdering them early. It was like a reverse job. It was like
my theory.
Pepperdine are chipping away.
But that's what you got to look at in the conference tournaments. You take like these rested teams against teams that had to play the night before and play their top game. And I'll tell you what, let's transition to the conference tournaments because Ralph Michaels had some great data yesterday on Wager Talk TV. And I thought of you, Gabe, because, we always talk about the talking heads, the non-betting shows say it's so hard to beat a team 3 times in the same season.
Oh, yeah.
Ralph has the numbers on this going back to 2010.
They always beat them 3 times, yeah.
What do you like this? The team that lost the first 2 in the third meeting, 780, 775 against the spread. It's exactly 50.2%. Now, that's against the spread. But straight up, they only win 30% of the time. So, once again, if you beat them twice, 70% of the time, you win the third one. What's interesting, though, is if the favorite lost the first 2 and their favorite the third time, they win about 60%. So it goes back to that. Good teams don't get beat 3 times in a row, but bad teams normally do. And it's something you're going to hear so many talking heads talk about over the next couple of weeks, and it's just statistically not true.
Well, and I agree with that, too. I've always bought it. I've always known that was a fallacy, that whole, if it's hard to beat them. No. If you beat them twice, you beat them the third time. Yeah, if you're not good enough, you're not. If you weren't good enough in January, you're not suddenly going to be good enough now to beat them. I agree.
Plus, you're focused, right? You sometimes let down in the regular season in the second meeting, but in the conference tournaments, it's one or done, right? So, you don't let down against a team even if you've beaten them twice. Exactly.
So, one thing that gets me, though, what do you think about this interesting angle for tonight? Speaking of the conference, so it leads into this. Portland tonight play Loyola Marymount. They just played. That was the last game. They just played. The last regular season game of the season was in Portland. Portland beat them by 10. Now they're getting 7 on a neutral court. So I'm just thinking about a confidence level coming in here. Like the kids in Portland are stepping on the court. They're like, it's not like, oh, we're scared. Oh, we're playing Loyola Marymount. They're going to think we just beat these guys by 10 a couple of days ago. I know now we're playing in Las Vegas. It's a neutral court. But what do you make of Loyola Marymount being 7-point favorites in this game? Seems a little high to me.
Yeah, the trigger for Teddy now is to tell him the zigzag's the best betting strategy ever. We joke about that every year at the NBA playoffs because he's like, it doesn't work anymore. But I think
exactly. I'm doing the zig. I'm staying, Steve. No zag. I'm staying. Yeah.
Right. Sometimes you zig, sometimes you zag, man. It's just like life. It's about balance. But what I do like, Gabe, though, is digging into those box scores from the earlier meetings. What's great about conference tournaments is we do get a lot of third meetings. Loyola won the first game this year by 27 points as a 10-point home favorite in January. And then they lost the second time by 10, like you just said, just last Saturday as a 3.5-point road favorite. But as is often the case, 3-point shooting, they were just 30% from beyond the arc. They got outscored in that game by 12 points from 3-point range, only lost by 10. So I do think they're the better team. And the fact it's a quick turnaround revenge spot, I do lean that way. And it's just human nature. And that's why the zigzag does kind of work in the NBA playoffs still, is that teams that win don't need to make the adjustments the other team needs to. And often that creates some value.
That's a good point. One thing about Loyola Marymount, too, they're pretty good offensively. They can, when things start to fall, like you said, when their 3-point shots are falling for them. I took San Diego last week against them. I think I was getting like 12 or something.
Right.
Marymount won by 40. They really lit them up. So
it was like 96-62. Yeah, that was a big win.
It was bad. Whatever. Yeah, I got murdered. It was bad. I was on the wrong side. Bad pick. What do you think of the total here? 142.5. They got to 130 only at home last week, but that's a little different. I'm expecting this to be higher scoring.
Correct. And once again, they only put up 60 points on the road, only shot 39%, 30 from 3, like I mentioned. That first game,
and
though,
Portland's a tricky place, too. They're not great, but if you're from L.A., Steve, Loyola Marymount, it's not fun going to Portland to play. You're not taking a first class. You're not playing the Portland Trailblazers either, bro. You're literally playing in a gym, and you're staying in a dump-ass hotel. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, and in hindsight, though, Portland was probably a good play last week. And the reason I say that is because Loyola won that first game by 27. They were plus 27 points from 3-point range. That was the difference in that game a month earlier. So, that's what you want to look for. And I would expect them to shoot better tonight.
All right, so as we talked about the game going on, they're playing on the same floor as Pepperdine and San Diego are playing on right now. It's coming up next, following at the Orleans in Las Vegas, Nevada. Hopefully there's no scorpions running loose in the hotel rooms at the Orleans like they are like they are on the Strip. But that's another story.
I had not heard about that. The Scorpions?
Oh, it's a scary story. It's disturbing, Steve. Very disturbing.
Laying points on the road in college basketball is an absolute landmine. I would not do it. I won't do it the rest of the year. I'm done doing that because it just consistently loses.
I mean, 3 possessions in a 9-point game in which the opposition now is the clock, not the actual team you're facing, right?
Right.
And these guys are taking up shots. I mean, it's just like, that's why it's the NBA.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid.
Athletes in Canada, Wayne Gretzky, Connor McDavid, no longer can be part of these sports betting ads.
Now, what's interesting is there is technically a carve-out that will still let these athletes and celebrities appear in sportsbook ads, but it's only if those ads are slanted toward responsible gaming. So you could still have a Connor McDavid saying, hey, bet responsibly on TV in Ontario.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
4.22, the fastest man alive.
The guy just made himself a whole lot of money, did he not? By now holding the record for the fastest 40-yard dash. But if it's one thing we know is that doesn't translate into quality football players in the NFL. So somebody will bite and overdraft him because he simply ran faster than everyone else. It's just rinse and repeat.
The early line, only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
$30-27 right now for the Milwaukee Bucks over the Los Angeles Lakers. 46-42 San Diego over Pepperdine right now. Interesting game, as we stated. Pepperdine had it easy yesterday. 27-25 Bradley over Illinois Chicago, Steve. And this one, this is just sort of a gut feel that this one could be close, actually. I think Bradley are going to win the game, but they were laying 12 and a half before tip-off. They're laying 8.5 right now, 27-25. And I say this, and I have Bradley in a moneyline parlay to close out, but I expected it could kind of be somewhat of a close game, and it is. I can make the argument Illinois-Chicago plus 8.5 is a play. They might be one of these bad teams that just sort of gets hot. You know what I mean? They won last night in overtime.
Yeah, and Bradley beat them by 18 and 12 in the regular season. You can definitely make an argument that sometimes a favorite like that overlooks their opponent the third time. That's another reason why, it's not about revenge necessarily. Sometimes it's a letdown by the team that won the earlier meeting or two. And the other thing I'll point out, and I got some angles from Ralph once again on this, is that, this conference tournament is a new start for the bad teams. And my William & Mary tribe, 0-9 in February, now 2-0 in March. They won last week and they won today. is a perfect example of that. And they'll probably lose tomorrow to Towson, by the way. But you got to zig and zag a little bit with these first games as well. Ice cold teams are actually a good play. In fact, Wager Talk TV yesterday, Ralph had this thought. Teams that are off back-to-back wins versus a team off back-to-back losses, just 80 and 115, just 41% against the spread. And if they're a favorite of 11 or higher, just 35% against the spread the last 10, 12 years. So, you got to be careful, like playing the obvious this time of year, especially in that first tournament game.
Yeah, I know. We're kind of like we're throwing so much out. People are, I thought you guys said it was easy to be a team the third time in a row. But, yeah, it doesn't mean you're going to cover. And as you stated,
this is point spread, exactly right.
Yeah,
and keep in mind, the team that lost the first two are 780 and 775. They're technically up like 5 net games over 1,500 games. So it's basically 50-50 against the spread. Exactly right.
Like Bradley's coach doesn't care about the 13. He just wants to get to
and
the
they got to play more
game.
games. That's a great point,
exactly.
Gabe. I mean,
exactly.
You're going to sit
if
your
they're
guys
up by
theoretically.
4 minutes. It's like, all right, guys, we're up by 16.
Right.
Good job. Have a seat.
Yeah, you're
we're
not
playing
going to keep them
tomorrow
out
night
there.
again. Yeah.
Right, exactly right. And whereas the underdog has nothing to lose because their season's over in 4 minutes.
And
so
they
that's
don't
a great
quit.
point.
That's what I love too with those teams at the end. They know this is my last game ever. I'm taking the 3. I'm fouling. We're not going out.
That's
this.
a good point too. Look at free throw shooting, right? It's probably more important this time of year. And there was an angle years ago, and I haven't tracked it recently, but about 20 years ago, if you just blindly played any of the top 10 free throw shooting teams in the nation in the NCAA tournament getting points in the first couple rounds, it was like 70% against the spread. I always thought that was kind of an interesting angle because it also correlates to teams that shoot well in general. Bradley for tonight, 73% against this, free throw line. It's a little bit above average, but it is something you want to look at.
So looking at non-conference tournament games tomorrow, there's some of them are big. Listen, Duke, North Carolina is always a showcase, but it doesn't change anybody's life whether they win or lose either team. That's what I'm talking about with these games. Doesn't change anything. Duke wins, Duke loses, North Carolina wins, doesn't change their tournament chances or whatnot. It's going to be a close, fun game like it is every year, but it doesn't mean anything. But let's talk about some of the teams on the bubble where they really sort of we know, they need to win the game. St. John's needs to win games. They're laying 19 points against Georgetown. Too many points? Or just a pass?
I mean, here again, you know the old saying, right? I say this in the NFL. You talk about week 17 and week 18, right? One of the best plays in the NFL is to actually play against those must-win teams. And I've always said the lines get inflated a little bit because of it. And in any sport, if a team was good enough to win when they had to, Gabe, they wouldn't be in a must-win situation in the first place, right? So it's a big number here. These teams, I believe, played a few weeks ago. St. John's won 90-85. Both teams shot lights out in that game. Georgetown actually made more threes. So I would lean St. John's, but here again, winning by 20 or more or winning by 10 isn't a big difference for them, but it's a huge difference if you're playing the point spread. Villanova
really are on the bubble for real, too. That was a bad loss the other night against Seton Hall. They just got punched in the mouth. I thought, dude, they own Seton Hall. They beat them 9 of the last 10 times they played. But now that this is their big shot here, man, hosting Creighton. What do you think about this? Creighton in Philadelphia.
It's interesting right now. There's only 5 teams in the country that are top 30 defensive efficiency and have a better offensive rating than that. And the reason I bring that up is because the last 8 national champs, I went back and looked, by the end of the season, they had a higher offensive efficiency rating than defense. Even when Virginia won it a couple years ago, Virginia was 3-5. They still were better offensively. Creighton is one of those 5 teams. So theoretically, they're a national title contender. Like you said, Villanova's been choppy this year. I mean, they're not even close to being ranked right now. Creighton's a difficult team to fade. It's a more important game for Villanova. It's a last home game. They are only 10-5 at home this year. Not as strong of a home court as you would think. They played way back in December, and Villanova actually won the game by 2 on the road, but Creighton shot just 5 for 24 from three-point range and lost as a favorite. So this is one of those rare spots where the road team is the better team with revenge. So should be a focus spot for them.
I think they're going to get something done, but it should be noted, McDermott's contract's up, Steve. And
I just saw today, I think he got renewed, Gabe. I think I saw something today on that.
So that's what I was going to say. He's been telling them, let's get this done. Let's get this done. Let's get this done. And it hadn't been done, but I guess they got the wheels moving in the last couple of days, because it was popping up. Other teams were like, what? McDermott's contract's not done, huh? Because he's a hell of a coach, bro. But it's unthinkable. He is Creighton. It's hard to believe that he would coach anywhere else. But they got to pay him.
Yeah, I see it as 10 hours ago. It says agrees to a 4-year deal. makes him one of the Big East's highest paid coaches. So I thought I saw something earlier today about it happening.
His agent,
so I guess it did.
His agent did a good job, Steve. You know why? Like, he got it out in the media. Oh, yeah. Like, because you know why I saw it? He was connected to Michigan. Michigan people are like, throw Howard under the bus and get McDermott in here, right?
Wow.
And that stuff doesn't, like, just pop up accidentally, right? So McDermott's people start leaking stuff out there that, hey, look at this. They market McDermott's a big name out there, and then suddenly they stepped up with the money because it's been going on for like a month or something right now. But yeah, they are a dangerous team, but are they too reliant on the three, Steve Creighton? That's always the thing, right? When they get to the tournament.
I picked them a few years ago in my bracket to win the whole thing, and they vastly underachieved. So my gut feeling is that they will not get it done. You know, one of those other 5 teams I mentioned also, Gabe, is Purdue. I know UVA lost to a 16 and won the whole thing, but I just don't know if Matt Nader can get it. They've lost, I think, 3 years in a row to a double-digit seed at some point in the tournament. The other 3 teams, by the way, Duke, who plays UNC, and I do think that's a good revenge home spot for Duke tomorrow, by the way. UNC's wrapped up the number 1 spot, but Duke can tie them for the conference share, so it's a little more important for them. Arizona is one of the other teams, and those are the 2 I think that are kind of live, are Duke and Arizona. And I'm blanking on who the other one is. I'll pull it up here in a second. I'll have to look it up. But I knew Purdue and Creighton were the 2 I thought were a little bit phony. UConn. I'm sorry. UConn's the other one. I think UConn, Duke, and Arizona are for real, though. Arizona plays a little bit too fast for my pace, though. UConn and Duke are half-court slower teams, so I think that'll help both of them over Arizona.
I hate to be chalky and stuff, but if I had to ride one horse into the tournament, Steve, I'm going to jump on the Houston Cougar horse.
Yeah, I mean, big game tomorrow.
Like I'm saying, if I have to pick one team, you know what I mean? I'm like, you're right, ride or die. I'll go with Houston. They're
the best defense in the country, and they play slow. It's hard to disagree with you. That Kansas loss last month was strange. They allowed Kansas to shoot like 66% from the field. Kansas had an 18-3 turnover deficit at home and still won by 13. I bring that up because they play tomorrow. Houston, undefeated home court, best team in the country, best defense, slow down style with revenge. That'd be the only way I'd play that game tomorrow.
Up to 8.5 right now.
Yeah, it's
and
pricey.
you know the other one, Steve, I like Duke, actually. I think Duke are a live team come tournament time. I would have to say the same thing about North Carolina, actually, but Duke, there was a little bit of value. They were in a 25-1 range. What if you guys pop that back up? I don't know what they are like today right now.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think Duke and UConn are the 2 that I would choose out of those 5 I mentioned. North Carolina's entering the 25th offense.
Duke can play with anybody. Like 23-1.
They play slower, Gabe, than they used to play under Coach K. They're only at the 242nd tempo, and that's one of the reasons I like them tomorrow against UNC, because UNC still plays fast. What's crazy about North Carolina, though, 6th the best defense, only 25th offense. You would think it'd be the exact opposite in recent years. So that's what's kind of interesting about the Tar Heels.
What I like about them, though, they got a great point guard. They got a big man. Like North Carolina have all the pieces that you need. And a team that I'm a fan of, Steve, that I think are just you're getting great odds with is Baylor. I think Baylor can play with anybody, too. I'm not saying they're going to win, but like Baylor can match up with anybody, right? We've seen them beat. They're in the Big 12. They took Houston to overtime. They've beaten, they can beat anybody, Baylor.
They're coming from arguably the toughest conference. They won it, 2-3 years ago? They won the national title, so we know they can get it done. They're the 5th most efficient offense, so that checks the box there. Alabama's the 1st best offense. The concern with those 2 teams, Bama's 109 on defense right now. Baylor's 73rd, so it's really a question of can those defenses play better in 6 straight games.
And Bama's so home dependent as well. But is the spread too high? So, like, Houston is 8.5 here. Speaking of Baylor, Baylor's taking on Texas Tech tomorrow. Texas Tech are 1.5 point favorites. Other teams on the bubble tomorrow that are playing. What do you think with this one, Steve? Mississippi State and South Carolina.
Yeah, South Carolina's been an interesting squad. I've used them with success, and also they've burnt me a couple times. A few Saturdays ago, about 3 Saturdays ago, when they blew the 15, 16-point lead against LSU and lost outright, and then they win 3 more after they won like. Yeah, go ahead.
Did you see the video of the last? So they played Tennessee the other night. I took them plus 5.5. They're down by 7. No, but they're playing like at the end. It was this little like really like crazy like oh my god like they were hit. Tennessee kept hitting free throws. South Carolina didn't quit. Like so, there's like 5 seconds left. Steve, Tennessee hits the free throws. South Carolina like runs down the court and lays it in and fouls them again. Type of deal. Like it was like wow, you guys are hardcore. And it was like, please just miss one free throw, Tennessee, okay? Of course they don't. The kids swish. So the same kid hits like 4 free throws in a row in the last 15 seconds or whatnot. South Carolina didn't quit again. With like 2 seconds left, bro. They like whipped the ball down the court, and the kid on the Gamecocks dunked it home with like 0.3 left on the clock in the game, and the ref was like, no, it doesn't count. It did count, though. There was no reason not to count it. Like, it did count. Like, and it was like, it was out there. It was like worst beat ever. People were like steaming. It was like one thing to lose, but it's like, dude, he dunked it. Like, come on. But I think this is kind of a tricky spot for the Gamecocks.
That's the second time that's happened in a couple months in an SEC game, because I do that Tennessee Valley ESPN radio hit on during the week. And what game was it about a month ago? I think it was an Auburn game. It might have been the Bama-Alabama Auburn game.
Yeah.
They didn't count the final basket. They all left. It had no effect on the game, but it had a huge effect on the point spread. And the host and I of the show were like, now that so many states have legal sports betting, they got to start taking this stuff more serious.
Dude, it's like a thing the stock didn't count, but when the market's still open. It's like you said,
the last trade.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. It's like, no. It went through before the market closed. Exactly. It's like, no, it went through. So speaking of which, how about this story, Steve? Gambling watchdog company U.S. Integrity sent out an alert to casinos on Thursday night regarding unusual wagering activity on Temple. UAB Temple. The betting line moved significantly during the day. At one casino, the line moved from UAB as a 1.5 point favorite over Temple to an 8-point favorite by mid-afternoon. The Blazers won 100-72. This is the second straight loss for Temple and the second straight game in which the Owls did not even come close to covering the point spread. A source within the gambling space says the U.S. Integrity and authorities have been monitoring Temple games for a while now. To be some nervous people in Philly, Steve.
Talk about when we get back. I've got a take on it.
Yeah.
Laying points on the road in college basketball is an absolute landmine. I would not do it. I won't do it the rest of the year. I'm done doing that because it just consistently loses.
I mean, 3 possessions in a 9-point game in which the opposition now is the clock, not the actual team you're facing, right?
Right.
And these guys are taking up shots. I mean, it's just like, that's why it's the NBA.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid.
Athletes in Canada, Wayne Gretzky, Connor McDavid, no longer can be part of these sports betting ads.
Now, what's interesting is there is technically a carve-out that will still let these athletes and celebrities appear in sportsbook ads, but it's only if those ads are slanted toward responsible gaming. So you could still have a Connor McDavid saying, hey, bet responsibly on TV in Ontario.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
4.22, the fastest man alive.
The guy just made himself a whole lot of money, did he not? By now holding the record for the fastest 40-yard dash. But if it's one thing we know is that doesn't translate into quality football players in the NFL. So somebody will bite and overdraft him because he simply ran faster than everyone else. It's just rinse and repeat.
The early line, only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the game start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
This is SportsRage. I am Morency. We've got Lou coming up, Gamblu in a couple of minutes, actually, here, Steve. So if you can throw a pick at us you like, but you wanted to get in on this Temple story. What do you think about this story here?
Yeah, so I wasn't following it too closely till today when I heard what you heard, but when I looked at it, the line move obviously from like 2 to 7 was strange. But what jumps out to me is they got blown out, but not that they got blown out. They gave up 100 points. The team total was like only 70-something in that game. So they gave up 25% above the projected team total. Think about this, Gabe. If you're an underdog and you're going to throw a game, you don't want to miss shots, right? You still want to score. So what do? You don't play defense, in my opinion. You just let the other team score. You play a high-tempo game. You still get your 20 points a game. Your numbers look good. The defensive numbers don't show on the stat sheet. So I really do think this is fishy. And now that you say they've been looking into several games, makes me wonder even more. But just on the surface, for Temple to give up that many points in a game that moved like that with no significant injuries is very shady.
The Owls are 11-19 on the season. What do you think? So they finished their game. They finished their season on Sunday against UTSA.
I was looking at that tonight to see who they
so
play
they're going to play hard now? Like this, I'm almost
here's
thinking,
my favorite,
man,
the
they
favorite
can't throw it
was,
now. They got to show up
exactly
now,
right.
on Sunday.
It's
like they
you got to fade
the
them, but
players
then
are
you're
going to
like,
say,
wait
guys,
a second.
they're going to be calling each other. They're going to be like, bro, we can't F around, bro, man. Like, so we're on the cover of Sports Illustrated, man. Like, you know,
Right, exactly right.
Well.
So it's like,
you know what I mean?
So do they cover? Do they play more defense and you play the under? Do they score more and play? Like, I've already been thinking about this. I don't even know how to play it. I probably just won't touch it. But it reminds me of the early 90s when Arizona State, the guys fixed a lot of games, local bookies, and then they got greedy, went to Vegas, and got caught. It's one of the famous moments in sports fix history. And the funny thing is, Arizona State was notified at halftime by the Pac-12. They went out and covered, so the guys lost their bets and got arrested. So you never know how this stuff plays out.
That story's the best. There's a Netflix documentary on it where they interview all the guys.
Oh, I need to see that. I didn't realize that.
The point guard that started it all, that was on the take, couldn't control other players. It's really funny. He goes, I swear to God, this guy on my team never hits threes. He couldn't miss this night. so he's watching his teammate hit shots. He stopped passing it to him.
Costing him money.
This is SportsRage. I am Morency. We're kicking it. Shout out to Steve Merrill. Great stuff. Level 1 already done. Quickest 100 minutes of sports talk and television. Yeah, what's the I've talked about this before. The Arizona State story. It's a Netflix, because it's not like just Arizona State. It's in like a series. What's the series called? It's like all sports controversies and like scandals. And like each episode is about a different scandal. Like they have the Juventus like soccer stuff, which was really, really cool. like Juventus paid off referees, but not to throw games. Bad sport. Thank you very much to the people to Tommy Reynolds and our Master Control here for letting me know. Yeah, bad sport. So yeah, check it out on Netflix. Bad sport. So each episode is different. But the Arizona State story is great. I remember when it happened. So to see it like to see like the after everybody get interviewed about it after and stuff was fascinating to see how it went down. And it was like the guard on Arizona State. All right. It started like typical stuff. He owed a couple of $1,000s to bookies. He was losing. He was betting on sports. He was losing. They told him, listen, you don't have to do anything. Just, you know what I mean? Just don't cover, right? Type thing. And so he was like, yeah, okay. And he, he didn't want to do it, but he ends up doing it. Except he realized after the first game he tried to do this that he couldn't control his teammates. So he was like, I had to get other people involved. And the next thing you know, there's like 3 of them involved, right? And that's like it started to get out of control. And it's really funny watching the highlights. Shout out to everybody joining us on Sirius XM, channel 159 on the SportsGrid radio and television networks. This is SportsRage. I am Morency. Shout out to Steve Merrill for joining us at level 1. Lou from Gamblu.com is going to join us in a couple of minutes. We got the Lakers and the Bucks going on right now. And I'm on the Bucks in this game. The Lakers are winning right now. Yeah, there's still a lot of basketball left. It's 58-50. One mistake of mine, and I apologize for people tuning in because I'm trying to give you good advice here, is when LeBron doesn't play, Laker games are really high scoring. LeBron's awesome and stuff, but he slows them down, right? He's got the ball in his hand all the time. He walks it up the floor. The dude's 40 years old, right? So the Lakers play at a quicker pace when he's not around, and I should have jumped in on this total originally. Said it's not that bad right now. It's 236.5, and we're already we're at 108 already right now. And Milwaukee just hit a 3 like I thought they were about to. So we're going to jump in on the over of this game. Let's go over the number, and we got the Milwaukee Bucks. We're going to go over 236.5. Loyola Marymount and Portland are tipping off in about half an hour. It's the tournament, so they have to have, 20, 30 minutes in between games, whatever it is. Pepperdine and San Diego are tied at 52, man. It looks like they might be going to overtime. There's 4 seconds left. They're tied at 52. And then, 20, 30 minutes after, they clean the court up and stuff like that. I think they got to let the other teams warm up, too. I think it's 30 minutes in between games. Like as soon as the other game ends, boom, 30 minutes, Nevertheless, Loyola Marymount and Portland. It's an interesting handicap, this game. Like Steve mentioned, Loyola Marymount murdered them earlier this year. They just played this past Saturday night. They've just played 6 days ago in Portland. Portland beat them 70-60. So Portland's going to have confidence. Loyola Marymount are better than they are. Portland aren't very good. This conference, too, we see sometimes some of these games get away from teams. It feels to me like they're going to get over 142.5 here. And I think, I believe Portland can hang around. I don't think Loyola Marymount are going to smoke them. So we've got a couple of minutes to get into that game. Other scores right now. 77-69 for Tulane over Wichita State. I'm on Bradley, and Bradley have absolutely exploded in the second half. I'm glad I didn't jump in on this. I was like, oh, you know what? It's 27-25 at the half. They're hanging around. Bradley have outscored Illinois Chicago 25-4 in the second half. They're now up by 23 points. We're going to cash this. I played just a money line parlay today. I put it in at 6, 8 in the morning or something before I went to bed. 5 a.m. Pacific, whatever. I was like, yeah, I'm not going to wake up in 4 hours for these games. I better get the bet in. This is a weird parlay I played. I took all on the money line. High Point, Indiana State, Drake, and Bradley. That was my 14 banger. It was like minus 152. So it wasn't like some great payday or anything like that. It wasn't even plus money, but it's on the verge of winning at least. In fact, like Drake murdered Evansville, Indiana State killed Missouri State, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, not Kareem, but Kareem. High Point got it done. They didn't kill Radford, but they covered. They beat them, and now Bradley are up by 22. So we're going to cash that. That's good. 58-53 right now for the Lakers over the Bucks. NHL hockey. All right, we took the under 5.5. I figured, we got so much going on here. Let's check back in. We got under 5.5 for the Jets and the Kraken game It's scoreless right now. And this sets up nicely for Vancouver, actually. Hopefully this game goes to overtime, the Jets and the Kraken, because the Jets are playing the Vancouver Canucks tomorrow night. It'll be a better spot for the Canucks. And the Jets did beat the Canucks the last time they played, like 2 Saturdays ago in Vancouver. I was thinking about going to the game, tomorrow. Saturday night games, during the NFL season, I don't go. So I like to go as much as I can on the Saturday for the Saturday night games. But to be honest with you, I was there 2 weeks ago, and I just saw the Winnipeg Jets. So I don't really, I don't really want to go back and see the exact same matchup. They're playing the Washington Capitals next Saturday. I almost rather go see the Capitals. I'll see Ovechkin one last time live, and some people like to go see good teams play against when your team's playing a good team. I started to realize that's not good. I went to the Dodgers and Yankees, right, at Dodger Stadium. The game I went to, the Yankees won. So I was looking at the Dodger schedule. I was like, oh, they're playing the Red Sox that weekend. I could go there. I'm like, oh, the Braves. I could go to the Braves series. Then I start to see, I'm like, no. They're playing Kansas City as well. Why don't I go see the Kansas City series? I know they'll win. I'd rather, I'm dead serious. I'm like, well, why go to Boston? Go see them play Boston, man. Whatever. They might win. They might lose. They should beat them, but, So 59-56 here. Let's get some points. We grabbed the over here, 236.5. It's 238.5 right now in the Bucks and a Laker game. I hope they close with a flurry here at the end of the first half. Tired of sweat jobs and sweatshops and everything else in between. So Lou Gamblu is going to step up. And then UFC 299 from Miami. They're in Florida. We've got a very, very cool card. And I'm sure Lou's going to have more than a couple of picks for us. The main event, of course, is O'Malley versus Marlon Vera. This is SportsRage.
Laying points on the road in college basketball is an absolute landmine. I would not do it. I won't do it the rest of the year. I'm done doing that because it just consistently loses.
3 possessions in a 9-point game in which the opposition now is the clock, not the actual team you're facing, right?
Right.
And these guys are taking up shots. It's just that's why it's the NBA.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid.
Athletes in Canada, Wayne Gretzky, Connor McDavid, no longer can be part of these sports betting ads.
Now, what's interesting is there is technically a carve-out that will still let these athletes and celebrities appear in sportsbook ads, but it's only if those ads are slanted toward responsible gaming. So you could still have a Connor McDavid saying, hey, bet responsibly on TV in Ontario.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
4.22, the fastest man alive.
The guy just made himself a whole lot of money, did he not? By now holding the record for the fastest 40-yard dash. But if it's one thing we know is that doesn't translate into quality football players in the NFL. So somebody will bite and overdraft him because he simply ran faster than everyone else. It's just rinse and repeat.
The early line, only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the game starts so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Let's roll. Level 2 continues. This is SportsRage. I am Morency. The Pips, the Players, the Hustlers, the people, the Muslim, and everybody else in between. We're kicking it on the Friday Night Freak Show. We're going to the half right now with the Crypt. It is 67-63 for the Lakers. So we got some points on the way out there. We took that in-game over 236.5, so we need 107 points now in the second half, which we should get. We're in a pretty good spot to be in. Dame Lillard, remember, so we gave you Dame Lillard over 24.5 points scored. He's got 14 in the first half. I think AD's got 13, 12 or 13. He might have 14 as well. I'll confirm in a minute. But it's 67-63 for the Lakers at the half. The new in-game total is 241.5, and the game is a pick-em. Milwaukee are minus 110. The Lakers are minus 120 right now. Portland are beating the Rockets 63-55. And let's bring in Lou right now from Gamblu.com to talk UFC 299. Lou, always a pleasure, my man. Thanks for taking the time to be with us. How you doing, Lou?
My pleasure to be here, Gabriel. Doing great. Big, huge card tomorrow. I'm kind of fired up.
Yeah, we got the combat sport weekend rolling by watching the Anthony Joshua Francis Ngannou match earlier in the day. And I think a lot of people, including Ngannou, were fooled about how easy the transition was going to be after he gave Tyson Fury all that he could handle. But Tyson Fury's trainer basically admitted after the fact that, yeah, we didn't sleep for 3 days. He didn't take it seriously. He didn't think it was, and we sort of saw it. Anthony Joshua, murdered Ngannou today, Lou. Like it was one of those, sort of like you would expect kind of with a top boxer and an MMA guy, but it didn't happen against Fury, but it happened this time. Dude, right away, Lou, 20 seconds in, Joshua just drilled him in the mouth. Boom, Ngannou's bleeding. Ngannou's not used to bleeding, right? So he's like, oh, my God. Next thing you know, he gets knocked down. He gets knocked down again. Then Joshua, here's Ngannou. Look at Ngannou's literally went to sleep. But Francis Ngannou made 16 million pounds for this fight, which is $20 million US. So, he'll be fine, Lou. But hell of a run for Ngannou, actually. He bet on himself, and he's almost lucky that these boxers, they like sticking it to MMA somehow, right? They're like, we're going to show you what real money is, because they don't have to do it, right? Joshua doesn't have to say, yeah, I'm going to fight Ngannou, but he does, and he makes $38 million, and Ngannou gets $20 million. But I guess as well, none of this would ever happen without the Saudis, because they're the ones that keep funding all this stuff, Lou. It's a crazy world that we're in now, bro. $58 million for a fight that a lot of people didn't even know was taking place today.
No question about it. And really, Gabriel, as you know, we got a history. I'm not the biggest boxing fan. However, with as much graft and greed as there is in boxing, that's how much money there is. I'm tickled to see Ngannou get his payday. But there are athletes in the UFC that are slicker boxers than is Ngannou. He is still not a fluid striker. He's big, he's strong, he's powerful. He's somewhat suited for mixed martial arts, but it's his size and his power. And against an apt boxer, the sweet science is going to dominate, and that's what we saw. To me, the ref shouldn't have let Ngannou get that last shot because he walked right into just a telegraphed right hand.
Yeah, it happened so fast. I think, I don't disagree. They could have stopped it after the second knockdown. All right, so let's get to the UFC 299 here, which fascinating card. We've got a main event similar to the last time we spoke, Lou, which we were talking about fighters fighting each other again, but the fight ended due to injury, right? So we have a similar situation here with O'Malley and with Vera. Right now, the line is minus 275. Vera is plus 225. Did anything stand out about the weigh-in, stare downs, or anything else in between this week with these two guys?
Not really. What I will say is this fight first took place, the original fight, 4 years or so ago. At that point in time, O'Malley was coming off a broken ankle. So he was, whether we want to admit it or not, a little compromised. And Vera had a perfect plan to attack the legs. O'Malley's tall, long, thin, and his legs are not structured. Vera had a great plan, won the fight. O'Malley doesn't want to credit him for the win, but the fact is Vera won the fight. Now, fast forward 4 years later, and what do we have? We have O'Malley, who has greatly improved in every capacity of the fight game and in mixed martial arts. And we have a guy in Vera that has not really added a lot to his game. If anything, he's more determined, he's more focused, and he's more dead set on getting his respect because O'Malley hasn't given him any since that first fight. O'Malley calling it a fluke, and Vera's dying to get at him. I think the key to me in this fight, the key to Vera is Vera must do everything he can do to get this fight into the championship rounds, past the halfway point of round 3. We've seen O'Malley look at the clock in some of his fights late in his competitions because he's shown a tendency to guess. That's not to say he's going to this time. He's prepared, but Vera has plenty of dog in him, and he must take this fight late to try and tax O'Malley, whereas O'Malley is the more skilled, more fluent fighter, and he's going to try and shave and cut Vera up as Vera tries to enter the pocket.
So how do you think it plays out as far as the distance of this fight? Are you expecting it? Do you think that Vera's going to be successful and sending this thing to the distance and making it just sort of an ugly type of fight and not letting O'Malley set up?
I think that it goes one of two ways. I think O'Malley now Vera's never been stopped, so it's not going to be easy to stop him, but this is a 5-round fight. I think O'Malley is favored in my handicap. It's O'Malley in the first 3 rounds to stop Vera, and if he can't get it done in those first 3 rounds, I think if we hit the 7.5 minute, the 9-minute mark in this fight, then I think it's the 12-minute mark in this fight. I think it starts to swing to Vera. Vera's not as skilled. He's much more determined. And I think the leg kicks for Vera and the pressure trying to back O'Malley up could compromise his cardio, and that's when Vera could turn the tables. I don't have a strong opinion on who's going to win this fight. I would say if I had a gun to my head that the fight does go to decision, however, and if that's the case, and you're gonna leave this fight into judges' hands, flip a coin because it could go any way.
Fight to go distance, yes, is minus 135. No is minus 105. I don't know, Lou, if you get into do you get into the props at all with
Quite
this
a
stuff,
bit.
like the so like total strikes landed, props like that. So if the fight's going to distance, are we expecting a high volume attack in this fight? Total strikes landed in this fight is 220.5. Sean O'Malley is 126.5. Marlon Vera is 94.5. And Now I'm getting memories kicking it old school in MMA Meltdown with Reed Kuhn. Remember Reed, big, great numbers guy, and he had all kinds of stats. More with Lou on the other side.
Laying points on the road in college basketball is an absolute landmine. I would not do it. I won't do it the rest of the year. I'm done doing that because it just consistently loses.
I mean, 3 possessions in a 9-point game in which the opposition now is the clock, not the actual team you're facing, right?
Right.
And these guys are taking up shots. I mean, it's just like, that's why it's the NBA.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid.
Athletes in Canada, Wayne Gretzky, Connor McDavid, no longer can be part of these sports betting ads.
Now, what's interesting is there is technically a carve-out that will still let these athletes and celebrities appear in sportsbook ads, but it's only if those ads are slanted toward responsible gaming. So you could still have a Connor McDavid saying, hey, bet responsibly on TV in Ontario.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
4.22, the fat man alive.
The guy just made himself a whole lot of money, did he not? By now holding the record for the fastest 40-yard dash. But if it's one thing we know is that doesn't translate into quality football players in the NFL. So somebody will bite and overdraft him because he simply ran faster than everyone else. It's just rinse and repeat.
The early line, only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
This is SportsRage. I am Gabriel Morency. Level 2 continues. We're talking UFC 299 right now with Lou. Just a quick check if you're just joining us. The Lakers are up 67-63 at the half right now on the Bucks. In-game total is 241.5. Lakers are minus 120 on the money line. The Bucks are minus 110. The Blazers are up a 5 spot on the Rockets, 75-70 with 7 minutes left in the third quarter. Boise State are up by 1 on San Diego State College early in the second half, 37-36. San Diego State are still 3.5. I thought Boise were live dogs, but we didn't grab it. Loyola Marymount and Portland are coming up. I see the new number 141.5 to the over. It's now 7.5. Loyola Marymount are laying the 7.5. I think it's going to be a close game, and I think it goes over, but I like the over more. We're kicking it with Lou. Let's do this thing. So when it's all said and done, Lou, sounds like you're going to be betting the over. And I asked you about props. So how do you approach MMA props? What are your favorite props, Lou, when it comes to MMA?
I like round props. I have a couple props later, on this card, but more it's correlated. For instance, there's a women's fight that has a high total, 2.5 over minus 300. So it's just very commonsensical to think that fight could easily end in split decision or majority decision, and you get a 3 to 3.5 to 1 kind of odds on a play like that. But most of the props that I play correlate to how I handicap the fight. How many strikes in a fight? That's a pretty volatile market, and it's really not my cup of tea when you do the math on what you mentioned before we went to break with O'Malley. O'Malley could have over 126 strikes in 3.5 rounds the way I see this fight going, because he's a volume guy and he's going to put it on Vera, especially early. Vera's numbers will be under, in my opinion, because he's going to press, he's going to push, and he's going to try and corner O'Malley and use elbows, knees, get him to the ground and get on top, I believe. And so that's not really the market that I excel at. I really try and pick sides, totals, and then props that correlate with how I determine the fight may go.
Let's get into Dustin Poirier. So Dustin Poirier takes on a fighter from France here in Benoit Saint-Denis that's just been lighting people up. And I think a lot of people are surprised. Wow, Saint-Denis is this big of a favorite against Dustin Poirier, who's seen it all, been in there with everybody, has high-profile wins, former interim champion. What do you make of this fight with Benoit Saint-Denis being a minus 220 favorite, Lou? And we don't have the shot up of him. I don't know. I can't. This is what happens when you're betting on this stuff, when we're looking at grown men's foreheads. But I don't know if you saw, Lou, there was a cause of concern with Saint-Denis in which people noticed sort of a red spot on his forehead that some people thought was a staph infection, right? And if you got a staph infection, it's not good. You're on antibiotics. It's not going to help your training. And quite frankly, I don't think it is, because you wouldn't really get cleared to fight, right? So fighters with staph infections don't really get generally cleared to fight. I don't know. Some people are like, it's just a pimple. So what did you make of the mark on his forehead?
I see people fight with those kinds of blemishes all the time. I believe that the UFC doesn't make money by canceling fights. So I believe that was staph, and I believe that fighters with staph fight all the time. I've seen it. The issue is that with the antibiotic in them, sometimes it makes it harder for them to make the weight. Saint-Denis had no problem making the weight today. He's a massive guy for 155 pounds. He is 4-1 in the UFC. He took a 170-pound fight on short notice in his debut, lost a competitive decision to a tough guy, and then he's starched the last 4 guys he's been in against, albeit journeyman fighters that are nowhere near the top 15. To me, Saint-Denis is taking a huge step up in class against Poirier. I believe there's tremendous recency affecting Saint-Denis, and I believe that Saint-Denis is going to go out there and try and get it done in immediate fashion against Poirier. Poirier, on the other hand, has been in with the elite. He's 35 years old, 7.5 years older than Saint-Denis. I think this number's moved on recency for Saint-Denis, and the fact that some people think that Poirier may be past his prime, and I would caution people to not think that. I think Poirier, though he's 35 years old and was knocked out in his last fight, that was Gaethje. That was 7.5 months ago. I believe there's plenty of time. This isn't a Volkanovski rushing to get back in 3.5 months. I think Poirier's firing fresh. I think he's very challenged. He's given me every sign that he's ready to go in this fight. It was he that requested this be a 5-round fight. Why? Because in a 5-round fight, the better fighter wins. If we see the belt around 3 in this fight, he will have lost the first 2 rounds. Dustin Poirier will have. But then those next 3 rounds are going to be a beatdown. I look for Poirier to finish Saint-Denis, who will be awarded his PhD in MMA in this fight. He's biting off too much, too quick, too soon. This is too big a step up, in my humble opinion, and no one has made more money off St. Denis than me in the last 4 fights.
I can't disagree with anything that you just said. To me, I don't really understand this number making Dustin this big of an underdog in a fight that I think is kind of a toss-up. I mean, like it should be minus 120. I mean, to me, this fight's kind of a pick-em. And even with that being stated, I think people are underestimating the diamond here in this spot. As you stated, he's a young 35 too. Yeah, he's been in some battles and stuff, but you can tell physically where he's at. He's still a hungry fighter right now. Some fighters sort of lose their edge. He's never made a ton of money enough to get sort of soft either. And it's not in his nature, right? And it's not his nature. I don't know if it was, I was watching the Countdown show or one of the shows, and Cormier was talking about him, talking about this is a guy that's grew up with nothing, right? I mean, he's fought for everything that he's had in his life. And I like the fact, too, that he wants to challenge himself against these, the up-and-comers, so to speak, as he stated. He said, they think I'm old, and I'm going to show them. And I wouldn't deem 35 and Poirier being old right now. Like I said, I'm surprised about the number, Lou. I'm going to walk right into it like Nagano into Joshua's right hand today. But I'm going to take Dustin in this fight. Plus 180, baby.
Yeah, he opened St. Denis minus 140, Dustin 120. So they're steam in St. Denis now. If I have to play devil's advocate, Poirier has been submitted. And St. Denis, the ex-French paramilitary, the guy's a hero in France. He's got a sturdy judo background, but I don't believe he's going to go out there and try and wrestle Poirier until he gets rung up. Then he's going to turn into a wrestler. He's going to go out there and throw bombs. And in his fight against Thiago Moises, he got rung up. St. Denis is more than willing to take one, to give one. He throws big, wide, looping power shots. That is a recipe for disaster against Dustin Poirier.
You look at Dustin, and we're not going to go over every one of his fights, but it's incredible when you look. Like Justin Gaethje, Eddie Alvarez, Max Holloway, Khabib, Dan Hooker, Conor McGregor twice, Charles Oliveira, Michael Chandler, Gaethje again. I mean, nothing's going to intimidate this guy, and he's seen it all, right? Like, so, plus 180, big fan.
Excuse me. He trains in Florida. This is a home fight for him. The fans are there for him, and it's St. Denis that rolls across the Atlantic to take the fight.
I understand it's hot there, too, which is an advantage, actually, for the locals. If it gets a little hot and humid and muggy in there. Okay, so we agree on that one. Let's get into this fight, and this one really does remind me of MMA Meltdown, because I used to have Michael Page on the show, Michael Venom Page. And he was in Bellator. And I got to be honest, I sort of never imagined he would ever end up in the UFC. It never seemed like it was going to happen. So it does now when he's 35 years old. So he makes his UFC debut. For people unaware of Michael Venom Page, he's calmed it down, right? He's toned it down. He used to almost be like, it was like professional wrestling or something to him. Like it was really that far, guys, where that's when we used to have him on in the early days. Like he was like sort of part Anderson Silva, part Roy Jones Jr., part like Batman. You know what I mean? Like he'd put one hand behind his back, Lou, right? Like he'd like real like jerk type stuff. Oh, I'm going to cover my eyes for a second. Like he'd like really showboat stuff, but it would always end with some spectacular, flashy knockout. And as he got better, as he had to fight better guys, he got humbled, so he's chilled it out. And I know that the UFC used to think he was a gimmick. What's your take on Michael Venom Page from what you know about him?
I think he's a gimmick. And I think that all the flashy Matrix kind of movement is all well and good when you're fighting guys in Bellator. His best competition, Lima, listen, there's a reason there's a UFC and all these other divisions. And Kevin Holland is a guy very much like Page. He chooses too often to try and put on a show for the fans. And I think that if he uses IQ here, All he's got to do is ground Page, put him on the ground, get on top, and slice him up with elbows. And this fight is his. And I believe that's what Holland's going to do. He's been in with much better competition, and he's 5 years younger than Page. I just don't see Page being competitive.
We'll hit this on the other side. It could be a fun fight, though, to watch.
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
It's going to be fun.
Laying points on the road in college basketball is an absolute landmine. I would not do it. I won't do it the rest of the year. I'm done doing that because it just consistently loses.
I mean, 3 possessions in a 9-point game in which the opposition now is the clock, not the actual team you're facing, right?
Right.
And these guys are taking up shots. I mean, it's just like, that's why it's the NBA.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid.
Athletes in Canada, Wayne Gretzky, Connor McDavid, no longer can be part of these sports betting ads.
Now, what's interesting is there is technically a carve-out that will still let these athletes and celebrities appear in sportsbook ads, but it's only if those ads are slanted toward responsible gaming. So you could still have a Connor McDavid saying, hey, bet responsibly on TV in Ontario.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
4.22, the fastest man alive.
The guy just made himself a whole lot of money, did he not? By now holding the record for the fastest 40-yard dash. But if it's one thing we know is that doesn't translate into quality football players in the NFL. So somebody will bite and overdraft him because he simply ran faster than everyone else. It's just rinse and repeat.
The early line, only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
This is SportsRage. I'm Morency, having a great time breaking it down, talking fighting with Lou, Gamblu.com in the house. We're talking about Michael Page, and those of you that used to watch our show, MMA Meltdown, remember, he was like a regular, like we had him on a couple, like he was a friend of the program type of deal. But with that being stated, he's 35 years old now. And another thing is, it's not like he's coming in here on some like torrid streak, Lou. He lost his second to last fight. Like, you know what I mean? He lost his second last fight, so he's coming in here.
And he fought Mike Perry in a bare knuckle and got beat. Mike Perry is long on strength, long on guts, long on aggression, but short on skill.
So, and you know, we also can talk, guys, and people that follow MMA know this. It's the fight game. So put it this way, like with Michael Page, and we've seen this a lot in the past, where they'll bring in a name guy from another company, yet they want to get him beat, right? They want to show that, yeah, you know what? Your champion isn't even as good as our middle guys are, right? Like, they like to show that and send a message. And if you do well in the first fight and you don't get chumped, they'll be like, all right, so it's almost like a gang initiation. All right. You look good against them. Now we'll give you someone easier. You know what I mean? But they're not doing him any favors. So when I look at this, Lou, it's not like they're like, wow, let's bring Page in and let him get a highlight reel, kick, knockout going, get some hype going online. No, they're like, well, let's bring him in against a guy that can just take him down and stay on top of him and kind of shut this guy up about wanting to be in the UFC. And we've seen this time and time again over the years, Lou, with the UFC. That's how they roll. Like, they handpicked Kevin Holland for this fight. They handpicked Kevin Holland.
They did, but partially because Holland talks a lot, just like Page. He tends to fight like him in his earlier years. Now, let's not forget, Holland has competed at middleweight at 185 and done well there. He chooses to fight down at 170 for advantage. So by the time these two step in the ring, in the cage, Page will not be the bigger man. Holland's an inch taller, has a reach advantage, and he'll be the heavier man. Page has his work cut out for him here. Holland just has to make sure he doesn't get hypnotized with all the movement, doesn't take an ankle to the teeth.
And you always wonder, too, about guys' first fight in the UFC. Even though they've been there, they've done that, every fighter will tell you, yeah, I fought in front of 80,000 people in Japan, but, man, first fight in the UFC, it was just weird. And, there's always a story how it's different, and it throws them off. It's almost like playing in your first playoff game, Lou, in football, you know what I mean, or something. It's different, right? And it's going to be a raucous crowd tomorrow night, right, in Miami. And they ain't going to be cheering for Page, bro. And they ain't going to be cheering for Page.
They're going to be cheering for the Texan, and it really, the fact that we'll have a big crowd electrifies not only people watching, but the fighters themselves. Again, this is going to come down to if Holland can control himself and stay on a plan, and his plan must be to tackle Michael Venom Page sometime during the fight and get him down to the ground. And if he does that, I think he finds success. And I think that minus 132 is a bargain on Holland. What you're gambling on is if he tries to make it a show and fights Page's fight, then it's a pick'em fight.
What do you think about Gilbert Burns and Jack Della Maddalena here, in which Burns is a plus 130 underdog right now?
Yeah, and it looks attractive, but Burns is 36, 37 years old. He has a very solid striking game that he's acquired. He's a Brazilian jiu-jitsu savant. He's incorporated wrestling. He's had 20, 25 UFC fights, deep on experience, fought the best. I just can't get over the fact that he's 36, Maddalena's 27 coming in. And Maddalena, though more singularly dimensioned, he was exposed against Basil Hafez a couple fights ago on a short notice fight because he didn't have very good takedown defense. Burns is surely going to try and take him down, get on top, and dominate him and or submit him. I think Della Maddalena should be regarded as very live here, even though he's the minus 160, minus 170 favorite that has to travel all the way from Australia. He's got power in his hands, and Burns does have to make the fight by coming to him. And this is not a fight I've bet, but I'm very wary of the younger man. There's tremendous advantage if you're 6 years or more younger than your opponent.
Burns is attractive, though, isn't it? I'm almost walking right. It's like bait car. I'm walking right into it, Lou, because I see the plus 130.
I think there's some
fighting
really
in Miami plus 130. I'm like, yeah. You got more discipline than I do. You got more discipline than me and the viewers do. We like to bet on all the fights.
Yeah, I have about 6 or 7 positions. We just haven't gotten to them yet, but we will. We're about to.
Okay, so Peter Yan and Song. Yan is a minus 125 favorite in this fight.
Yeah, he opened more like minus 140. Early money came in on Song pretty heavy, me included. And now, since the weigh-ins, it's trickled back a little on Jan, the ex-champ. Great boxing, really solid wrestling. However, Yadong isn't a 21 or 22-year-old kid anymore. He's from China. He trains at Team Alpha Male. He's now 27. He'll weigh 160 to 165 pounds when the fight goes off. He's going to be massively larger than is Jan. He's faster, taller, longer, more powerful. And I think that Jan is going to get rung up on the feet, and then he's going to try and wrestle Yadong. And with that girth and size, it's going to be tough. I think Yadong's in a really good spot here against a guy in Jan who has it all equipment-wise, skill-wise, but with his IQ, he tends to make mistakes. And it started with that kick to the head against Aljo.
The knee to the face against
the knee to the face.
Sterling.
And he's lost
a fight that he was winning.
He was winning that fight, and I think that triggered a spiral that he's had a hard time getting out of. Now, for Jan's defense, he's desperate, and we're going to see the best Peter Yan that we've seen in a long time. But I just think this Yadong is up for the task, even though he hasn't faced the level of competition that Peter Yan's been in with.
Another classic example of not gatekeeper, because we can't call Jan a gatekeeper, but another sort of top-tier guy. All right, are you still a top-tier guy, or is the new kid the top-tier guy now, right? It's the classic matchup of that. I was going to say this fight's going to go the distance, and I think it's going to go over the 2.5, but, yeah, so the odds makers are on to this. It's minus 235 to go the distance.
Well, the 2.5 is over 2.5 is minus 300 in this fight. Here's a fight that I have a prop on, Gabriel, and the prop is the fight, I believe it ends in decision, and will the fight end in split decision or majority decision plus 325? I recommend that. I bet Yadong. I also have made a bet on the fight to end in split decision or majority decision. Anytime the fight goes to these judges, flip a coin, because it's going to be schizophrenia time. You don't know what's going to happen.
Great point. Gamblu kicking it with us. So, Lou, Curtis Blades and Almeida, another fight that's a pick'em. And I always tell people you can sort of tell how good a fight card is by the odds. You know what I mean? Like if, like a typical fight night, which is, head-to-head with a bunch of sports stuff, you're going to have we talked about it last week, you're going to have your minus 400 favorites and your minus 600 favorites and stuff. When you have a really good fight card, they're pick'ems. Because it's like, man, that guy can win, that girl can win, she can win, but they can win too, right? That's what makes a good card. And we have all kinds of fights on this card that are basically pick'ems. What do you think about this fight?
This is a great fight because what you have in the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu side with the young man whose name, of course, I'm going to forget, Jayton Almeida. Almeida is a freak. He's a freak, but he fought at 205. And his two fights at light heavyweight, he weighed 203 and 204. So he had no problem
he's not a heavy
the
guy.
weight.
Yeah.
The issue with him was that nobody will fight him at 205. The guy's a monster. So he took on a couple of journeyman heavyweights, had success, and now he's slowly crept up, and he weighed in today close to 240. I think that's a lot of weight for a guy that's really small for the weight class. And then you couple this with the fact he's fighting Curtis Blades, a world-class wrestler. I've been taught by my Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu coaches and friends that kryptonite to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is a world-class wrestler. So you got Curtis Blades that's going to fight this guy, and he's a world-class wrestler as well. Blades weighed in at 257, 258 pounds. He'll be 25 pounds heavier than Almeida when the fight goes down. He's also got great hands, been in with Aspinall, and much better level of opponent. The Achilles heel to Blades is that if you pop him on the chin, he's got a glass jaw and he can go. I don't think Almeida, with his singular dimensioned BJJ, has the power to threaten Blades with a power shot to the teeth, and consequently this is going to be a grappling match. And so I'm taking the world-class wrestler that's the bigger guy that has more experience. I think this is a very, very tall order for Jayden Almeida.
Great breakdown. Curtis Blades right now is minus 110, as we say to the fight, is a pick 'em. All right, the first women's fight that we're talking about of the night here. Sermonera versus Macy Barber. Barber's a minus 225 favorite, Lou. What are your thoughts on this one if you have a take?
Yes, and Barber opened less than that. There's some money coming in on her. She's younger. However, Seminara, the previous Caitlin Chukagian, she's long, she's tall, she's been ranked in the top 5 of the division her whole career. And she uses distance in magnificent fashion. She's trained at Team Elevation with some of the gals there, and so she's really ready for this fight. And the prescription for her to do well is to have it's a matador and a bull, and Macy Barber is going to come right at her and try and strike her. Now, Macy Barber has a wrestling background, but she's throwing it to the wind because she's in love with her hands. And the prescription for a success for Chukagian, or I should say Sermonara, is a girl that's going to come right at her. We're in the big cage down in Florida. These are 125-pound gals. There's going to be plenty of room. I see Sermonara at just completely tip-tapping and pointing her way through Macy Barber, who's going to come right in for it. Here's another fight where I like the fight to go to split decision or majority decision because the total is 2.5 over minus 350 to the over. So I see this one as a close decision where Barber's going to be the aggressor, but the counter striker is going to be Sermonara. I like Caitlin in the fight, and I like that fight to go to split or majority decision for those people that like the longer odds and the props.
Man, I'm getting excited for this card, man. A lot of live underdogs. A lot of live dogs. She's plus 187. More with Lou on the other side.
Laying points on the road in college basketball is an absolute landmine. I would not do it. I won't do it the rest of the year. I'm done doing that because it just consistently loses.
I mean, 3 possessions in a 9-point game in which the opposition now is the clock, not the actual team you're facing, right?
Right.
And these guys are taking up shots. I mean, it's just like, that's why it's the NBA.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid.
Athletes in Canada, Wayne Gretzky, Connor McDavid, no longer can be part of these sports betting ads.
Now, what's interesting is there is technically a carve-out that will still let these athletes and celebrities appear in sportsbook ads, but it's only if those ads are slanted toward responsible gaming. So you could still have a Connor McDavid saying, hey, bet responsibly on TV in Ontario.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
4.22, the fastest man alive.
The guy just made himself a whole lot of money, did he not? By now holding the record for the fastest 40-yard dash. But if it's one thing we know is that doesn't translate into quality football players in the NFL. So somebody will bite and overdraft him because he simply ran faster than everyone else. It's just rinse and repeat.
The early line, only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
This is SportsRage. I'm Morency. Great stuff with Lou here. I'm really looking forward to this card. As far as, like I said, man, we got a lot of live dogs that I legitimately think can win the fight. O'Malley Vera, I'm not in love with that fight. Just like Lou, I'm not in love with it. I think O'Malley's going to find a way to get it done this time, but I'm not in love with it. I'm not laying minus 275. But I think Dustin Poirier is super live at plus 180. Kevin, if you're just joining us right now, Poirier plus 180. Kevin Hall at minus 125. Lou is up in the air about the Burns fight. Getting suckered in at the plus 130. Lou's going to sing a song. We're going to sing a song like Steven Tyler. Dream on, dream on. He's singing a song against Petr Yan. Curtis Blades is live, minus 110. Caitlin Sermonero. And I was just thinking Caitlin was good friends, actually, with Michelle Serpico, who used to be on our network. That's what I'm saying. This card is like flashback city for me about all these fighters. I probably had on like 10 of these fighters, Lou, over the years. I used to interview him before he was big. I remember her, all these fighters. So let's keep it rolling. Here's a fighter, right? Here's another one. Rafael Dos Anjos on the card. He's a plus 350 underdog, Lou. What do you make of this one?
He's fighting a vice grip of a chain wrestler named Gamrot. And this Gamrot is a legit top 3 or top 4 talent. Now, RDA's last 3 or 4 fights have been at welterweight, 170, because he was just compromising himself so much to make the 155 weight, he couldn't perform. So he went up to 170, and he found out that he couldn't compete against these monsters that weigh 189 pounds on the night of the fight. So now he's cut weight, and he made weight fine, getting back to 155 in this one. But RDA does not do well against chain wrestlers. What's Gamrot? Next to chain wrestler in the dictionary, Exhibit A is Gamrot. And so this is a terrible matchup for RDA. This is the one fight, I believe, that is a mismatch.
More on the other side with Lou.